Aloha. With this build, I wanted to get into or share some of my perspectives on where I'm coming from with the idea of the Most High, what some people call God, intelligence, and the mind control programs that have been built in and around the spirit within all living. So like when I ask a question of what are the origins of intelligence, what are the origins of creative intelligence, what are the origins of basically when you're talking about the flat earth, this is what you're really getting into. And we can see how commercialized and watered down this gets when you really look into this system having to mind control you to the very depths of the nature of this reality. You have to at the same time comprehend the fact that there's some serious power behind connecting with your origins, connecting with your roots, connecting with your intelligent origins. So what is that? That's my question. It's hard enough to get even to that question because you have people, individuals, and groups of people who are caught up in this repetitive cycle of trying to trying to disassemble their own self-destructive programs. Before you start creating anything of any kind of value on like the soul level, I mean, all of its value on the soul level through existence, but as far as conscious intent with your moves, with your thoughts, with your actions, the conscious intent with those kind of values comes first and foremost from having already gotten rid of all the programs, or at least the majority of the programs that keep you from creating, keep you from expanding that intelligence. The mainstream media, this system, Western so-called civilization, colonialism, it's made a business out of keeping people from going to the depths of that program because the system is based upon turning people into batteries. Enslavement, psychological, spiritual, and physical enslavement. So this is another reason why something like looking into the flat earth information is so important, because the majority of people are still locked into that self-destructive program, and the only way they're going to get out of that space is if they see more and more examples of people who have already done that work. So yes, in a sense, just as you have a responsibility to the future generation, 7 generations from this moment, to care for this land, to care for your values, to care for your intelligence, your culture, your everything that is rooted deeply in your organic existence. That's not only a responsibility that you have to take care of like you would take care of your wife or your children or your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, just as you would take care of them. How I see it, we have a responsibility to take care of the kids that aren't even born yet and the people who are around us. When you get into that space, a whole nother world comes to be. Apologies for the sound in the background of construction if you hear it, but let me turn the mic so it's a little just in case. So yeah, a lot of that energy, a lot of that power, a lot of that strength comes from your relationship with the unknowable, in a sense, the spirit that's existing inside of everything that is in the creative intelligence of this reality overall. So I'll get into the business part. I always get into the business part of how this mind control program has taken that psyche, has taken that relationship, and has turned it into something else. This something else is what we're seeing today as the military industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, the mainstream media, Hollywood, ain't about shit ass people in society, broken so-called civilization, ain't about shit education. Everything that we see in the mainstream media is counterproductive. It's counterproductive to what it is that comes naturally to us. This is why everything is fake. Everything is synthetic. Which is why Donald Trump has to play that fake card, because there's people, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, they know that stuff is fake. So if he's standing in front of everybody and he has the cojones to actually say, yeah, that's fake, then it doesn't matter like whether or not he's part of that fake program, because nobody else is saying that. At least he's saying that. So that's a win. That's like it's a strength that he has, that he actually represents as trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm different from this crew of, people who don't give a shit about anybody. But he's the main one to be not giving a shit about anybody other than himself. So that's the aftermath of, that's like the peak of separating yourself from the creative intelligence of this organic reality. He represents that mentality, Hollywood, the public education system, heliocentrism, this materialistic version of reality, these empty ass relationships, this empty society with empty people. That is the peak of having been separated from nature, humanity, your culture, and everything else that comes natural to you. This is how I'm seeing. This is what the peak. This is what is it? What people are calling like critical mass and all that stuff. That's excuse me. That's what I'm saying is what so-called critical mass represents. It's representing that. And whatever comes after that is up to us, is up to the people who get to that space, who put in that work to get to that space, just as much as you would paint something and you become a better painter or you become a better writer, or whatever it is, you're going to become better at what you do. So as more people wake up to themselves, our surroundings will become better. But there's no profit share in people being healthy. There's no profit in people being better. There's a big profit in people being sick. There's a profit in the prison industrial complex. There's a profit in people fighting and killing themselves. That's a profit-making program. And this is the business of our current reality we call the mainstream media and what's accepted as so-called Western civilization. And from my perspective, a big part of why things are not changing on a larger scale is because the majority of people get locked into a particular bubble and they don't really connect the dots, because you get you get really good at one thing, and then you get a lot of people saying, hey, you're really good at that one thing, you should stick with that. And then you get a huge following, and then what? Nothing. You can't change now. You've already started something that the majority of the time people don't have a lot of things that they're good at. This is another part of that mind control program. Another part of that mind control program is people, there's nothing to be proud of in society. In a broken, self-destructive society, what do you have to feel good about? What do you have to, you know, build yourself from the inside out with? What is there in the mainstream society? What, the American dream? Get the hell out of here with that. Really go into that. Like what is that? And then disassemble it for the people who are still having difficulty with trying to figure out some of the times where I'm coming from. Got sidetracked with with that. I was hoping to save that for the latter part of this video, but anyway. So the Most High, how I see this and how it relates to flat Earth and this reality is that a large part of the reason why heliocentrism was created was to not only separate you from, like, to have power over you, but to separate you from the creative intelligence, the Most High, the reflection that you are of this experience. Because once you're separated, you can be sold something. You can be sold whatever it is they want to sell you. They've chosen heliocentrism, chosen evolution theory, they've chosen the Big Bang and all these other scientific equations that they're calling scientific, but they're all theoretical. Trickster magic. Whatever God that these individuals or these entities are praying to when they're acting out these false flags and, you know, going to war and, you know, sending other people to war. You're dealing with souls. This is what this game is. A lot of people don't take this. They don't take it there, and especially in the flat Earth community. But even in truther communities and in the Black conscious community and especially in the New Age community, if you're even mentioning the military-industrial complex, you're still talking about the souls of men and women. What is that? Look at it on a chessboard. Donald Trump, George Bush, Barack Obama, everybody in that political scene. Imagine them sitting at a chessboard. Now imagine the souls of people sitting on that chessboard. And these assholes just moving stuff around. They're playing God. So, and this is another reason why I get kind of irritated when people say, there is no they. I don't hear it as much as I used to. About 5 years ago, actually probably like 6 or 7 years ago, I used to hear that all the time. There is no they, when I was in and around a lot of those New Agers who was talking about just regurgitating shit that just needed to fill the space, you know, make them feel good for a moment or something like that. There is no they. They is us. No, the hell they ain't. They is a particular mindset that is very different from another particular mindset that involves soaking the life and the souls out of people. Some people will never do that. They will not go there. And then others will live at the expense. They will live off of that, the blood of these souls, these parasitic vampires out there. The reason why the New Age program is so big in the mainstream media is because that is going to be the next control measure, is to water everything down. See, because you're already separated from the Most High. The only thing that needs to happen now is to create another version of the Most High. This enter in simulation theory, enter in transhumanism, enter in the possibility that they That the system might even say, oh yeah, there is no God, there is no this, there is no spirit, there is no soul, which has already been said by Bill Nye. Bill Nye has said there is no soul, there are just electrical neurons firing off in your brain. That's how simple this mentality is. This is the belief system that these individuals are selling to you when your kids are watching Bill Nye the Science Guy, when they're watching Bill Nye Saves the World and all those Discovery Channels, History Channel, National Geographic, and YouTube channels. These are the belief systems. These are the codes that are being programmed, soul codes that are being programmed into these kids and the adults, because a lot of these adults are man children and woman children. They can't, there's been nothing there. Just imagine just waking up and living inside a microwave every day, eating top ramen for 80 years of your life, every single day. Now imagine that top ramen is intelligence, is health, is relationships, is your definitions of things like love, compassion, empathy. Top ramen. McDonald's drive-through mentalities. All largely because you have no meaning and no purpose in the Big Bang universe. That's why it was created. So it can create something to be worshipped. Scientism today, the scientific community today, it is worshipped. This is what Hollywood is. Hollywood is designed to make you worship that. I mean, the majority of people listen to this channel, but they already know this, but I like to go into it and bring it into these talks every now and again, because that's just naturally how I'm seeing what's going on in like the comment section and other videos, other live streams. A lot of the things that are being missed consistently being missed. A lot of the times we don't take things as far as they could go because of our comfort zones, because of stuff that we haven't done yet. Maybe we're not aware of a lot of information. And if you're not aware of a lot of information, you're not going to allow yourself to empathize with that on a soul level, to feel any kind of compassion on a soul level. You might psychologically feel compassion. You might psychologically feel empathy. But you're never going to be able to go into the soul perspective of compassion and empathy and relationships that you have to each and every thing and everybody here. You're not going to be able to go into that space. Excuse me. You're not going to be able to go into that space unless you have gone through that work that you've got. Another example of that is somebody who learns from having experienced something next to somebody who learned from just reading a book about that experience. It's not the same at all. And even on one more rung down, the mainstream perspective is to have this generic microwave version of empathy and compassion. If then, how many times have you heard the word compassion come out of the news, Hollywood, in any kind of way? Empathy, anything like that. Conscious, anything. No, it's a styrofoam brain mentality. That's what's going on here. And it stems from the belief systems of the scientific community that says you have no meaning and no purpose. You stem from a monkey. You're just a blob that came together like the earth after the Big Bang because gravity said so. And now you're an intelligent blob with a smartphone. Be grateful. Be thankful for that. Because you could just be a blob without a smartphone. But how did you make this civilization built on technology? Who built? What blood and sweat and tears went into this? Don't talk about that. Don't get into that. Don't Don't talk about anything involving that. You're going to just be what we tell you to be. And the majority of people are going to listen and follow those words because they don't have their own words anymore. They don't have their own cosmology. They don't have their own culture. The wisdom that's been passed down from the ancestors over generations has been swapped out for university books, for social media. I heard recently a guy say, this is at the New Age program. This is some of the extents of the extremes of the New Age program. I heard a dude say, who's deep in that New Age system. This dude said, there is no need for ashrams anymore now that we have the internet. This is how far people are going. That's, like I said, there's no different. That's no different than what I just said in reference to reading a book about something and having experienced that something. And if you want to do all of the above, you're going to experience and read the book. But both of those are up to the individual. Point being, this technology-based, heliocentric, empty universe that's being promoted by these empty entities is not just something that just happened and it's going on. When you're talking about flat earth, you're talking about the soul. Even if you're talking about anything in the black conscious community, you're talking about the soul. You're talking about people. Babies. This shit is not a game. Flat earth is not a game. It's not anything to be wrapped up in a package and sold to the mainstream media so they can just sell it back to you with a UPC code on it and a fancy whatever. People who are waiting for the flat earth to go mainstream are largely still loving this society. They're loving this so-called Western civilization. They need this shit. And all the talk about, oh yeah, the Big Bang in flat earth, the Big Bang is just empty. It just does this and this and this and this, and you end up feeling nothing. Well, the society of today is built upon technology. When technology and everything that stems in and around technology, from technology. So when this technological based empty society co-ops or entertains your little flat earth based upon their consciousness, what do you think they're going to do? Based upon their track record, what do you expect these entities to do? What do you expect the people who are not privy to this information, what do you think they're going to do? Some will be shocked. Some will be shocked into the belief system and love it times 1,000 because it's thinking, or they're thinking that it's changing. Same things happening with this Black Panther stuff that just went down. Same thing happened the other night with the Oscars. Last year they had a problem, a so-called problem, as if it wasn't part of the agenda that's connected to this year with the Black Panther, with Get Out, and with all that other stuff. It's just a coincidence that a year after the Oscars was being presented with an obvious problem that they actually labeled it white Oscars. Now you have the Black Panther. Now you have Get Out winning Best Original Screenplay, and then you have this feminism movement going on right now. Me Too, Never Again, and all this other stuff. This is not a coincidence. This is the controlled opposition that I've been referencing for however many years now. Like I said, in reference to the what is it? The Black Lives Matter and Civil Rights Act is a better example, because we all know, and some time has passed that shows us that nothing really happened. The Civil Rights Act wasn't meant to do anything other than to maintain control over the masses by appearing as if it's changing. A pressure relief valve. Did it address the psychological problems of racism? Did it address everything that the redlining program? Did it address the Homestead Act? Did it address the head right system? Did it address any of these programs that are still alive today, that still benefit and have benefited and are still benefiting only the few? See, this is a slick ass little move that I saw in the Oscars just on Sunday. What happened was this feminism movement, I don't even like talking about this shit, because it's so like sick to even hear that. So this I'm getting distracted at the same time, getting distracted by the jackhammer outside too. But I'll keep going, catch my train of thought again. The feminism movement is out there to distract from the deeper programming, which is not just limited to the white supremacy program, but is the cracking of the door of the entire civilization, this Western civilization that has built its empire on the blood and the bones of the indigenous people, who had their own thing. Not to say that the indigenous people and all that stuff was all perfect or anything. Obviously not. What I'm saying is that the system that exists today is worldwide, and it's very noticeable. And there are many people who are not talking about this information. They cannot get into that conversation because they don't know what to do with that information. It's sick. And I don't give a shit how many truther videos and how many whatever this that you put out there. If you are missing the elephant in the room, what are you really talking about? You're talking about heliocentrism. You're talking about the relationship that people have. All people have with this reality. You're talking about the infrastructure of power. What were the things that were created to maintain that power, to hold certain people down and bring other people up? What were these mentalities that were out there and still are out there? So to finish what I was saying in reference to the Oscars, you had the white Oscars last year. Now you got the Black Panther. Now you got Black Lives Matter. Now you got Get Out. Now you got all this stuff. This is all the mainstream stuff they want you to focus on. And you have the feminism movement leading the way. And constantly you hear this, what I was hearing. That's the main theme in the whole, that's what it was. Male dominated. So the Oscars, in reference to this feminism movement, the Oscars takes this male dominated perspective and says, well, now we have to empower everybody by appearing to empower the women over the men. How are we going to do that? Well, obviously, Hollywood has been so-called male dominated for as long as it's been. But what has it also been dominated with? It's also been so-called white domination. And it's not only Hollywood That's just the peak of it. The mainstream media, your public education system, the information that you get. It's not this Western so-called intelligence is not universal. It's just like the heliocentrism program. This is not universal. If people in other countries and other nations around the world accept it, it's because it's been accepted over so many years all across the world. It didn't come from their ancestors. People use, and this is the one of the triggers that kind of gets me is a lot of people use the ancestral cosmologies as examples of what's really going on here. It doesn't take much to take it one step further and see how it's not just limited to your interpretations of this reality. It's limited. It goes into your interpretations of the experience and every single thing that's in this reality, including the mind control programs that keep us thinking and acting a certain way. The white supremacy program was invented for many ways, but one reason why it was invented was to make people hate themselves. If you have people hating themselves, that's like people fearing themselves. People are fearful of their own power. They don't even know it. People are afraid of being connected with who and what they are because the status quo of society has made that taboo. The status quo is don't give a shit about who and what you are. Just be nothing like the rest of us. Be an intelligent nothing. And that intelligence only comes from our university systems. Heliocentrism, look at your university systems. Look at the suburbs. Look at the politics. Giving you the idea that, oh yeah, things are changing. We have Democrats and Republicans. Get the hell out of here. I don't have patience for this shit. I don't have time for that shit no more. Never really did. But since I have the ability to interpret a lot of this stuff in a way that people can understand, then I'm still going to bring it up because it still is something that people are avoiding on a regular basis, and it's sickening. So back so I can finish this, because I'm going to leave this short because I'm that construction in the back. I don't even know if you can hear it, but it's irritating the hell out of me. So yeah, in the Oscars and the feminism movement and that whole thing, this is kindergarten movements. This is like nothing. It's trash, all of it. But it does have an effect on people who eat trash on a regular basis. And unfortunately, that's the status quo because this trickster magic has been effective for a long time. So effective that the people that it has enslaved are now defending this program. And the people who are enslaved are also subjecting themselves to other systems that are having the appearance of being for the benefit of the people, but are just for the benefit of the system itself. And that's where the defense comes in. That's where people are just like, they vest their entire lives into this. So the feminism movement, in reference to the Oscars, that's what they were saying. They said, oh, their platform that they're standing on is, this has been a male-dominated, industry for so long, and ... All these movements, all this, where were the movements for when we were talking about the white Oscars? Why wasn't that information spoken about? Why don't we have lapel pins and all this other stuff for, that's all bullshit anyway, but you see what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying when I say that. So you can see the design. Since you're focused on some kind of change, like Barack Obama after George Bush, you're focused on some kind of change with women having more of a voice and being respected, and men being held accountable for this stuff, and so on and so forth. It's not to take away from the fact that, yes, obviously, this entire system is based upon patriarchal programming. It's male dominated to the umpteenth degree at the expense of the divine feminine. The next layer of that, and the next mirror image of that, is the system that has made its money, has built its empire with all those people in those expensive ass suits, tuxedos, and dresses and all that stuff, celebrating themselves at the Oscars, not to mention all the symbolism that's behind that, that's just stolen and used as an alchemy against the people. We listen to all this stuff. We fall into it. We hear, oh yeah, it's recognizing it's an attack on women. But you obviously see the deflection from systems like the white supremacy program. And this is not to say it's all about that. It is to say that that system is very definitely part of it. Even the fact that I have to say that it's not all about that is because most people, a lot of people, still are having difficulty with even speaking about that, acknowledging that it exists. Everywhere you go, you're going to engage in it. You just don't see it. So-called black people, we see this shit all the time. This happens all the time. It's ingrained in this society. But people are trapped in these bubbles and they can't get out of it. So now that the so-called system is being held accountable by people who don't have a lot of weight, like, you know, people were talking about this information. We don't have a lot of I just realized I got really sidetracked from the most high talk that I wanted to get into in the beginning, but anyway, maybe I'll get into it later or another video, because this needed to be said. This was the information that I actually wrote down, and I guess I could tie it back because there's not much information in reference to that I wanted to go into in reference to the Most High. Let's just real quick. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the deflection, the distraction, and the avoidance of the programs that relate to the infrastructure of the system itself. If you're distracted by the fluff, if flat earth, the way it's been mainstreamed, the way it's being sold by these so-called top brass, that's fluff. Even flat earth is fluff when you look at it from that perspective, because it's not rooted in anything. What are your goals with flat earth? Anybody who's making these videos talking about mentioning flat earth in any kind of way, what are your goals? Truly. The truth and share the information and hold people accountable. No, you personally, what are your goals? How far are you going into figuring out what this information really does? How far have you gone into seeing to the depths? How deep have you gone into seeing what's going on here? Because that is what's reflecting your goals. My goals personally are rooted in the generations, 7 generations from now, and the generations before us. Beyond 7 generations, the all-encompassing ancestral generations. And what's going on every single day that I'm alive. That's where I'm coming from when I'm addressing and speaking in reference to simulation theory, transhumanism, flat earth and all these other mind control programs that are out there. But one thing that I don't see a lot and hear a lot of people talking, that I don't hear a lot of people saying that, because it's such a cool thing to, you know, it's just cool on its own to even mention flat earth and talk about that. And people get caught up in that cool crew, that cool crowd, and just constantly regurgitate that over and over and over again. This is not to have expectations on certain people. I'm just genuinely interested in what people might have to say about that. Because to me, it's not normal. It sure as hell ain't natural to see that. I guess one could argue, to me, it's not like that, but one could obviously argue that it is normal because people are going through their own process in their own way. What I want to bring some kind of attention to is that concept that is basically the mirror image of how social media affects people. There's nothing real anymore. There's nothing organic. You're just a talking head. You're just a thing that is just floating in space. Just shat out the Big Bang. It's empty. Something or somebody that's empty is not going to have any goals. Something or somebody who's totally invested in this parasitic society, they're not going to have any goals because the system runs everything. The system's driving the car. They're sailing the ship, and you're just along for the ride. Are we really talking about, because it really is irritating to even go into this space, because it's so obvious to me, and I'm not the only one. Some people might listen to these channels and think like, oh, it's only obvious. No, I have a lot of friends that this is like when I'm making these videos, I'm talking to my brothers, my sisters, my mothers, my fathers, you know, I mean, my friends. And they're real people. They know what's going on. A lot of the times I don't have to over-explain a lot of these things like I do on here, because they already know. They've experienced it already. They don't have to read the book. And most of them actually have already experienced it and read the book, which is why it's so easy to pick it up. But you have people who are just, they're experiencing it over some kind of, maybe a video. So a video actually is like social media. It's kind of like, yes, it can affect you. There's images and all that other stuff. But how I see it, social media overall is like a step down version from getting some information from reading a book, in reference to the step down from experiencing something. This is not to say that, you know, there's anything wrong with reading a book or watching a video. Nothing at all. What I'm saying is that I'm using these examples to share the differences between that and how that system, that step down system, is involved in the de-evolution process just as much as heliocentrism, the mainstream media, and all these other colonial mind control programs are. It's the same thing. It broke your relationship with the Most High when the books were brought over, when the missions came over here and started building all of these things and killing and genociding the people for the resources, for the land, without any concern for humanity or anything. It was just, let's do it because we can. And they seem to allow it. Maybe those people aren't like you. They never thought about that. And if they did, they didn't care. They just turned it into a world and said, oh, well, this is our destiny by God. Manifest destiny. This is what this represents. How are we not talking about this information? How is it not in the same moment connected to every other storyline of these so-called truther communities and all this other stuff? You can't have real true goals until you have deeply rooted connections to your origins. Any goals that you produce will largely be based upon some kind of fluffy, shallow version story that still exists in the mind control program. No different than like Democrats and Republicans and Bernie Sanders and that whole alternative, aggressive, progressive. Same thing like Alex Jones. You hear his goals. He's easy. You know what? Alex Jones actually speaks more about a lot of shit in reference to goals and society. I mean, as fucked up and like backwards as those things are and shallow, at least he's saying something. At least he's out there saying something about it. This is not at all to give Alex Jones a pass at all. It's just to give an example of how so-called truthers and other people don't at all go there. That's my point. They don't at all go there. At least Alex Jones says 1776 will commence. We're going to take, the Make America Great Again and take back our country and all this other shit. I mean, obviously that's all nonsense. But he's a good example to use in reference to, at least he's talking about something that he believes in. Even if he's an actor, even if he's totally out there to do it, like I said, I'm using him as an example of how people in the so-called flat earth community, black conscious community, the new age community, these aggressive, progressive communities, all these little communities, a lot of the times, most of the times, there are no goals there. There's no kind of like, oh, what are we really talking about? If you do start talking about goals, people usually get into the micro. It's like, oh, we just want people to, wake up and be better. Stop doing this and stop doing that. Okay, that's a good reflection, or that's a good thing for the individual, but what about the macro scale? What are we talking about there? That's a whole nother book you have to read. That's a whole nother experience you have to experience. And as long as you are keeping yourself comfortable within the micro scale of, oh yeah, just kind of deflecting from it, you're never really going to get into that space. And that's what I'm seeing is going on within these so-called flat earth communities. The farthest it goes into these flat earth communities are these flat earth Christians. They tell you all the time their goal is to get you to, find God through Jesus Christ. And that's it. Hey, that's their goals. That's what they want to do. Who is anybody to tell anybody else, like, don't do this. Don't follow that God. I mean, anybody can change everybody is only going to change on their own, not because of anybody else changed them. People are a part of that change, but the individual has to actually activate it. You can have all the book, you can read all the books, you can have all the information in the world, but if the individual is not ready, if the individual is not willing, if the individual is not informed and dedicated to walking that path, then it's not going to happen. That's what I'm seeing is kind of like one of the downfalls with these truther communities, social media overall. It's all just a commercial. It's empty. It's just like information, nothing. Nothing comes of it. Just like if flat Earth goes mainstream, or when flat Earth goes mainstream, or whatever they do to try to distract from what's going on, it's just gonna be a commercial. So again, it always will loop back to you, the individual. Now, what are we going to do as we start to see this? I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just asking questions, and I'm presenting perspectives that I have my own belief systems in reference to, this discussion and so on and so forth. That I'm still working on myself. I still have all that going on, just like anybody else. I bring it up because it's a rare thing to actually hear people go into that space. I hardly ever hear it. It's just jargon a lot of the times. We're just kind of throwing stuff out there, just making other assumptions about assumptions. So I guess I'll end it. I'll end it on this and loop back to the Most High question or perspectives that I wanted to share in reference to specifically flat Earth. So when I talk about the origins of intelligence, you can also see that as like the origins of people. So you have these mind control programs of the out of Africa theory. You have the mind control programs of eugenics and white supremacy and white superiority, thinking that, the so-called white man is more evolved because their head structure or their way. I mean, these are all belief systems that are out there running rampant in these programs. So I don't have to over explain it, but so you have the gods, the many gods in the older sort of so-called civilizations. Then you have the modern gods within these mainstream religions. We have all these various bubbles that people fit in. My point is, or my question is, and how I see this is, there's an origin to the spirit. There's an origin to this information, the intelligence. And there's also an origin to us, humanity. Some kind of way. There's some kind of relationship there that I can't say. I don't know for sure. I don't give a shit how old things are here and there in Africa. It's some older things in the Americas. A lot of the times people don't even talk about that. But that's another thing that could be another distraction, because when you enter in the information in reference to flat Earth and the North Pole and beyond possibly the ice wall and Antarctica and all that other stuff, now you're getting into something else. You can see that as other, like I was referencing earlier in this video, is in comparison, you can see the differences of people trapping themselves in a particular mindset. So you have all of these theories that are out there. My point is, we'll get there. But if you already jump into another belief system without allowing it to present itself naturally, how is that any different from the individuals who created these mind control programs today? It's a good idea that everybody came from the North Pole, that everybody just originated. That's a good idea. I don't know that for sure. I don't have any documentation for that. My point in reference to that is there is an origin for us. Regardless of where that is, we have an origin story, just as intelligence has an origin story. So if you can understand that intelligence has an origin, and humanity has an origin. All of this, look around, look at the complexities of a leaf. Look at the complexities of a root system, fungi. Look at the complexities of that. That didn't just happen on accident because a big bang and gravity brought it together. That's the dumbest shit ever. As complex as that is, it just happened on accident? Get the hell out of here with all of that. There's an intelligence there. So, for me, as I'm on my path, I don't need to know exactly what it is. I know that it is something. It's an origin somewhere, just like your soul. Where's your soul? Where's your soul? Is it over there, down the street, over there? Where is it? How do you know? Is it only in your body? What is it? Maybe it's maybe your soul activated here in this physical reality we call the earth plane. Who's to say your soul isn't like this invisible etheric sort of blanket that is just layered with everybody else here? As the plane lays out, your soul lays out. And the vibration of that, whatever that is, you, affects everybody. I mean, this is known when you can even take it to being so-called scientifically proven when you're talking about just hanging out with people. You affect people. People watch you. They listen. They change themselves from looking at other people, listening to other people, reading books, having experiences. People change. So my question is, man, I ain't got no more questions. I'm gonna end this video because I'm tired of talking over jackhammers outside. And yeah, I pretty much made my point. To go back to before I do, to kind of like smooth the edges of the whole Most High origins and that intelligence information. I wanted to share that because we have to be cognizant of how we approach a lot of these things, to be very aware of creating other belief systems just because. I mean, it's nothing wrong with creating a belief system as like a placeholder for your next interpretation of whatever that reality is. But when you formally say, no, this is what it is. This is exactly what it is. What for? Why? What's the benefit? What is it around? If you can understand a deeper understanding, if you can understand a deeper interpretation of intelligence, a deeper interpretation of the complexities of nature, and just the fact that, hey, yeah, there is something here that exists inside of everything. There's a meaning and purpose, and you had this system that only wants to work for itself, entities, whatever you want to call them, that took advantage of that, just as much as you can take advantage of chopping down a tree to make something stupid. That tree is innocent. It exists for a purpose, for whatever, it's there. They say, oh, well, we can cut down this tree. How about we cut down some people? Yeah, if you want to cut down people, you can't just cut their legs off. You have to psychologically cut them down. Enter in white supremacy. Enter in colonialism. Enter in mainstream religions. Enter in this so-called democracy, capitalism, the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex. Put guns in the community. Put drugs in the community. Amplify the way we look with Hollywood and bring them down at the same time. Make them hate themselves. Separate them from God. Separate them from nature. Separate them from anything and everything that gives them any amount of power. And if they start asking about power, if they start talking about power, you have to control that movement. Enter in this fake ass feminism movement, Black Lives Matter, this LGBT stuff. It's all designed to water down everything, to jump ahead of the curve and keep you from doing it yourself. What I'm saying is that you're not going to be allowed to do anything for yourself if you're consistently limiting yourself to the reactionary programs involving this trickster magic. Read about it, experience it, talk about it. Whatever you have to do, whatever is natural. When a lot of people ask all the time, like, what books am I supposed to read, or when am I supposed to do this and this and that? It's up to you. It's different for everybody. It's different for everybody. My journey is going to be completely different. We might have the same destination, but the best way that you can do you is by you doing you, the way you do you. You have to figure out what that is. People who are still benefiting from and just like living and profiting off of this so-called white supremacy program, there's nothing there. It's not real. It's made up. People made it up. But you can make a synthetic god and a synthetic king out of that. Look around. Look at what's going on around here. I'm curious in of what people I'm interested in and what people are really thinking about taking this information. Like, what are your goals? What's going on here? Flat Earth community? What are we really talking about? Like how, yeah, what are we really talking about here? So leave a comment, make a video, whatever it is, or don't, or just think about it. Because that's ultimately just really my intent with this, is just to help people think about something. And once again, thank you for the support and just being there, like, period. Because it's nice to know that, you're not alone. It's very nice to know that other people are thinking the same way and doing this work, putting in the work. Because you can't do it by yourself. There are parts of this process that actually require you to be doing whatever it is that you're doing by yourself. But overall, we're all working on this in our own way, in our own time, working towards the same destination. Whatever that is, maybe we're not even supposed to know. But I do know that the system that's in place right now is very obvious. It has very obvious systems that have been going on for a long time. All of our families, all the future generations, like the future generations that coming from my circles, they're going to be engaging with the future generations from your circles. And if we don't do that work right now, it's never going to get done. So thank you. I appreciate it. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.